Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk program. My name's Jude, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I speak from the land of the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, and also to any Aboriginal people who may be with us at some point. So, welcome and to all of you. And what I'm going to be talking about tonight is cycles, epigenetics and emotions, how to survive everything. So, I treat these sessions as interactive. So, please, if you have a question or you want something clarified, just stop me midstream. I'm quite happy for you to do that. And alternatively, if you really want, you can wait till the end to ask questions, but I'm happy for you to interrupt. So tonight's talk, I'm going to begin at the physical level and work through the emotional, psychological and spiritual levels. That's what tonight's talk really is about. And in many ways, tonight's talk is about transformation. So I don't know whether you've heard of epigenetics before. It's a kind of a fairly more recent or emerging area of scientific research that explores how environmental influences in our early life affect the way we express our genes later on in life. So during childhood development, our DNA actually acquires chemical marks that determine how little or how much of our genes is expressed or will be expressed in the future. This collection of chemical marks is known as the epigenome. And different experiences that children have rearrange these chemical marks. So, first of all, I just want to explain the difference between genes and the epigenome. You know, we get our genes from our biological parents. When I was studying developmental psychology, we were taught that 50% was from the mother, 50% was from the father. And look, indeed, while I was studying, a friend of mine who's a doctor and married to a doctor, their daughter developed an illness, and the specialist who was treating the daughter asked to do genetic testing on both the parents, and it was done, and they discovered that the daughter had 78% of the mother's genes and 28% of the father's genes. So I'm afraid that 50-50 is wrong. Obviously, you know, it will vary from person to person what we get from our mum and what we get from our biological dad. So their genes, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever, our colouring, our physical features and our height and so on. And so why is it that genetically identical twins will exhibit different skills, different health and different achievement levels when they have supposedly identical genes? Well, it's because different experiences that they have rearrange the chemical marks. Now, this is the current scientific explanation. If we look for a spiritual answer, it's obvious that we have two separate souls in those two separate bodies. And whilst those souls would obviously have much in common, they are still separate. And we know that each soul, the soul is unique and individual and separate, is a separate little life force with its own inner trays and determinants. So no two souls can be identical. It's not possible. Every soul, we know from a spiritual perspective, every soul is unique and different. We could have, shared tendencies or traits and have lots in common with many other people, but we are still all just uniquely us. So the nature-nurture debate has no relevance in the light of epigenetics. In fact, or in terms of a spiritual perspective, that both are important. And nowadays in psychology, we'd say probably about 50, they're about 50-50. And as a person actually grows older, the nurture has less effect than nature. The original tendencies will come out more as we grow older, and the effect of nurture fades. So genes determine, as I said, our physical characteristics, but also our temperament and, to an extent, our behaviour. But these epigenetics marks that govern the expression of the genes also govern where and how the information that the genes carry will be released as we grow older. Environmental toxins and stressful life circumstances will leave a unique signature on our genes, and these can be temporary or permanent. Both types affect how easily genes are switched on or off. We may have a stable and loving environment with lots of opportunities for learning during our childhood. Hopefully this is the case. And certainly it is the case for a good 50% of the population. And likewise, this will also have a profound effect on how those epigenetic markings are expressed later on. And so a question could be, can intervention reverse negative changes and restore healthy functioning? Well, researchers are open to this possibility. But look, my personal experience tells me that it is not only totally possible, but a strong reality in many, many, many cases, particularly if there is intervention. And this is why intervention can be a very important factor in our process of change, or the process of change for many of us. For instance, and lots of things can be an intervention. We know that meditation changes our DNA. That's a fact. We also know that the early years of a child's life are crucial, and that nurturing, supportive experiences with responsive, warm, loving carers create the most favourable opportunities for optimum development and epigenetic signatures that will activate fully our genetic potential. For instance, in less ideal circumstances, sometimes people can be quite stressed environmentally. Say parents who are expecting a child may be going through considerable environmental stress. And that may be, for instance, a young couple expecting a baby in Ukraine or in a war zone, or, in a country where the economy collapses or there's tremendous political problems like in Sri Lanka at the moment, where this stress is coming from the outside, but it affects the parents. And during pre-birth and pregnancy, the stress on parents has an inevitable effect on the child in later life. Kids act out for a reason. And the reason is that they don't have the words to express what they're feeling and experiencing. And when they act out, what they really need is not punishment. They need a warm, close, loving person who is able to nurture them and elicit and validate their feelings of pain and frustration. Punishment changes nothing. In fact, it usually just makes things worse. Because we are human, we all need to be understood. If I was a robot, I would not need to be understood, and there would not be a lot to understand. And what allows us to understand one another, what is that? Well, it's our emotions, our feelings, and this capacity that we have for compassion and empathy. That it's through empathy that I can relate to you in your situation or what you may be going through. And as a result, feel very compassionately towards you and your situation. Emotions affect how we function cognitively, or that means thought-wise, our thinking. And I'm just going to reflect on a book by Damasio, and that book was called Descartes' Error. And it's a very good book. What it does, it explains how that cognition rests on an edifice of emotion. Damasio was a neuroscientist. He was a very early, actually, neuroscientist. And he wrote about this almost 30 years ago. Neuroscience is not much older than 30 years. So at the basis of learning and cognition is the emotional being in us, And that emotional being is connected to our visceral state, meaning our very deep inner feelings, rather than our intellect. Furthermore, now neuroscience has absolutely revealed this. Furthermore, our visceral state governs our nervous system, which is why our feelings have a resonance through our organs and our central nervous system. You know, the interesting thing is that our first response to everything that happens is experienced emotionally. Thought comes a little later. It may be a millisecond later, but it is later. The feeling definitely comes first. And so, you know, we are feeling beings who think rather than the other way around. And this is one of the very early messages of neuroscience. So the visceral part of us, well, what I mean by visceral is our central nervous system. And so an emotion reacts instantaneously on the central nervous system. And the vagus nerve goes from the neck, up here, the neck, the brain stem, and it goes to every organ in our body. And those electrical impulses, when we feel an emotion, will go to our organs in less than a millisecond. And so that's our central nervous system. That's why, you know, we talk about, a gut reaction. It's not cognitive. It's not something that we're thinking about. I just feel that in my gut. So the messages to our brain from the inside of our being can actually be much greater than information coming to the brain from the outside, from the environment, via our senses. So gut feelings can be overwhelming, and we do need to listen to them because they're 100% accurate. We live in a social world these days, and we have for a long time, that teaches or programs us to disconnect from ourselves, to rationalise everything, to not listen to our feelings, you know, to think things through and to focus on the external. So how often have you had a gut feeling about something and ignored it to your peril? Now, we've all done it many times, I'm sure. Expanded states of consciousness are at our disposal. And it's why we meditate. It's why some people love LSD and psychedelics. And it's why the creative act can open new realms of experience and inspiration for both artist and audience. And our awareness is very, very important. Expanded states of consciousness open, really switch on and open our awareness. And this is where we kind of step out of the box and go into the unlimited. Understanding cycles of time opens our consciousness from the finite linear perspective to an unlimited one. Being busy and stressed is a major reason that people don't create space to grow or work on themselves. So where is it we're all going in such a hurry? So spiritual knowledge is not about a pain-free existence. The pain becomes worse with knowledge and working on ourselves more often than not. Knowledge has to sink into the mind, and this is why the ego hijacked mind can really reject the truth, because it doesn't want to be confronted with it. The truth is very confronting very often to the ego. The truth that it doesn't want to look at about myself or about other people or about the world. So knowledge has to sink into the mind, not just float around. I'm talking now about spiritual knowledge, not float around the mind. And so with work on the self, facing the truth and like about the self, accepting the truth, we can transform and find peace and stillness. So cycles are very much the basis of spiritual growth. Energy moves in cycles, and we are energy. Everything is energy. So all energy moves in cycles. And we will cycle around and through the same old issues as we grow older, and they will arise in different forms for us to work on them. And that's, something may come up for me when I'm 20, 22, and I work on that. I might even get some help with it, whatever. And then later on in life, 27, 28, 30, it comes up again. And then a bit later, it'll come up again and again until sometimes, I need to grow more and have more experience to really understand what it is with me from different perspectives. So I could work on something and resolve it to whatever capacity I have at the moment. But then as time goes on, I've got to come back to it and work on it from a new angle and from a deeper perspective. And that's why that's what I'm talking about with cycles. And I have people come to me in my therapy practice and say, Judith, I saw you 7 years ago, or whatever, 6 years ago, or whatever it was. And we did all this work on it. And now it's back. And why is that? And it sounds a bit weird to say, well, it's because the problem is you went to school and you were educated to think that everything is linear, including ourselves, and it actually isn't true. The mind is not a linear processor. Nothing about us is linear, except what has been put in here from the environment. And that is fundamentally a myth. It is untrue, and that's why it causes us problems. We need truth. in order to understand ourselves, we need truth. In order to understand the world and what's going on, we need truth. Otherwise, it's all just television commercials. And so the ego just about always resists what is at some level. And it is this resistance, ego resistance, that causes us pain. It blocks energy. It blocks energy in us and causes pain for us. It can also, cause headaches or backaches or sore knees or pain in the neck or, or an illness. Blocked energy, if there's blocked energy in the essence of us, in the soul, in the life force, that is going to manifest in the body. Because this interconnection inside of us is profound. And it's, this is what energy is all about. Everything is interconnected. Last week I was talking about karma and synchronicity and change. And what is inside, because we're energy, affects the environment. It affects what is outside as well. And so if I've got energy blocked inside me, then that will also block energy in my relationship. And it will also block energy in the environment. So this is why I'm going to generalize. I'll say blocked energy is probably the biggest problem we human beings face. It's all about blocked energy and linear thinking. When we are in a place of non-resistance to what is, whatever that is going on, this unblocks energy at a deep level where the stuckness is. And that's the aim. This is how we transform ourselves. We have to unblock that blocked energy. And, it's not always at a conscious level, it goes deep. And this is where meditation does play a very, very important role. Therapy is very helpful with this as well, that we can go back down through the layers that we have created, the layers of the ego-constructed self, where these energy blocks are, and start to work on them. And for someone who is very blocked, we need to come from both directions, therapy being the outer direction, meditation being the inner direction. When you've got both, then you can start to really move that energy. And wherever the stuckness is, when we unblock blocked energy, then the stuckness, and there's a release of that energy. We see whatever it is we needed to see. We have a realisation. We face it. We look in the mirror. We own it. We let it. And it disperses. That energy As soon as we see it and own it, it disperses. That is the thing. And you could call this surrender. It's ego death. And we need to do it again and again and again and again and again at deeper and deeper and deeper levels as we cycle around and around and around. And each time the sediment washes away more and more and more. So this is why working on ourselves takes time. Everything is connected internally, which is why it's impossible to do everything at once. And so we revisit these blocks and these stuck places at deepening levels until we become really good at it. And we develop a much more subtle awareness. And it's like going in and doing very fine surgery on the self. You know, in India, they sift the grain and they sift the dal and the lentils and the chickpeas and everything. Everything gets sifted so that they can pick these things out from the grit. Get rid of the grit. And so it's like sifting sand. Working on the self is like sifting sand. It takes quite a time to develop this skill because we have to go through ourselves at such a fine level. Now, at first, a person won't feel a boulder under their mattress because they're so disconnected. But eventually, they'll feel a grain of sand. They'll feel a pea. Remember the pea, Princess and the pea? She couldn't sleep with the pea under the mattress because, it was bruising her so badly. And that's what we are like when we're still functioning at a fairly crass, gross level of self-knowledge or very little facile self-knowledge, then, the boulder will be there and we won't even feel it. And further along the track, just this, a little imperfection, we will feel it and it won't feel good. So becoming more and more skillful at recognising the mind or ego-constructed self. This is the game we play. And this is a game of cycles, of blocked energy. It's a game full of obstacles. And it's why practice, and more practice makes us very attuned and humble. It reminds me of that lovely little saying where someone is asking advice and says, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the other person says, practice, practice, practice. So I'm just wondering at this point whether we have any questions.
Yes, Jude. There's one in the chat that I've put.
just to open the chat. Hang on. How can we unblock energy? Is that the question?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, the first thing we have to do is identify that the blockage is actually there. And how would you identify blocked energy, Ranjula?
I suppose it will be like something that is actually bugging me or something I cannot solve, like unsolved mystery.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It might be that you're sick. It might be that you have a really bad back and it's chronic and it will not go away, or you've got a twinge somewhere in your body, or you've got a repeating thing that happens, or you're not getting on. You identify a pattern in your life with your partners, or you're having an issue with somebody, could be personal or professional or to do with work or somewhere else, something that is bothering you, in other words. And if something is bothering you, you can make the choice to completely ignore it and hope it'll go away, or to distract yourself from it. And people have all kinds of mechanisms for distracting themselves from issues in their lives. But if I say, okay, this is bothering me and it's been bothering me for a while, or this isn't the first time, let me have a look at it. And so if I have a look at it and I break it down and I just follow, one of the things I say to people is track it back. You know, if I'm seeing people and they've got a problem with their relationship, I say, okay, well, look, let's, you know, you're here now. When did you first notice this issue or this problem? Okay, now what was happening, you know, that gave rise to this problem? And let's just track it back. And, you know, the thing that is so amazing, particularly with often with couple relationships, you know, I may see a couple of people who've been married for decades, and they'll track it back and say, well, this problem started just after we got married. It's actually been there for decades, and they've both been trying to pretend it's not there or whatever. And the thing is, it may have been a small block way back when, but now it's a big one. And it's kind of like understanding the law of karma, that when a karmic account, which is, of course, blocked energy, first presents itself to us, it will present in what we call a seed form, as a very, very small. And in that small form, it's actually easy to ignore. And so we tell it to go away and we don't give it any attention. But then it will come back a little bit bigger. And if we ignore it again, it'll come back after a bit, a little bit bigger. And after a while, it'll come back again, a little bit bigger. And, you know, this is the law. This is the law of karma. It is the law of energy. When there's energy is blocked and I ignore it, the blockage will become bigger and more uncomfortable. And so this is why embracing with humility, you know, with an attitude of non-resistance, okay, let me not resist. Maybe that I need to look at myself, something about myself that I've disowned because I don't like that part of myself. It's not, it doesn't have ego appeal, that part of myself. Might be an angry part of myself or part of myself that's, you know, vengeful or resentful or just can't forgive or whatever. It's not, you know, I will judge it as socially unacceptable. And I don't want people to see that part of me. So I try and hide it away and bury it, put it under the rug. But nonetheless, it will rear its ugly head and continue to let me know it's there. It will continue to cause a problem. And I may project that problem onto somebody else. And it may be the person that I'm with when it gets triggered. And that disowned part of me, I may be projecting onto somebody else. That's what I do. When I disown parts of myself that I don't like, I unconsciously transfer or project those parts onto other people. And my experience with that other person may be that they irritate me. There's something about them that really irritates me, or I don't like them. Or on the other hand, I may just think this quality in them is so lovely. Because I've actually probably from an early age disowned that quality in myself, and it's a lovely quality. I can do it in both a positive and a negative manner. But how do I identify blocked energy? This is how. Something is not sitting comfortably with me. And it may be a tiny thing. It may be easy to ignore, but what I'm saying is sift through the sand. The more work we do on ourselves, the more we start sifting through the sand. And I have to say, you know, this really is my experience. At the outset, you know, you're dealing with possibly, you know, an addiction of some sort, or addictions plural, you know, things that are pretty obvious. And I could be in denial about it, of course. But at the outer, when I start working on myself, I start working at the gross level first. So I need to deal with things like addictions. If I've committed to a journey of personal and spiritual development, then I'm going to start with the gross things and work through along the way to the more difficult, deeply buried, much less discernible things that other people may not necessarily notice, but I feel in myself. And they cause me a lot of discomfort. The more work I do on myself and get rid of the big stuff, of the obvious stuff, then, the beautiful thing is I am changing my DNA. I'm changing those epigenetic markers with intervention. And I will start to... Sorry,
that's interesting.
It is interesting.
We can change our DNA.
Yeah,
through
we do.
meditation, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. I'm reminded of the experiment done by... can you mute yourself, Ranjula? I'm getting feedback.
Okay.
The experiment done by a research institute in America, where they took a piece of DNA from a person. A piece of DNA could be a scraping from someone's nose, or under their fingernail or whatever, just anything that gives a bit of DNA. And they took... I'm still getting feedback. Is anybody not muted? No, that's weird. Anyway, so the person was in Los Angeles, and they took the DNA to New York. Now, that's over 3,000 miles away. They took it, in a petri dish and so on. And so a scientist in New York, in a lab, received the DNA in the petri dish and was there with a microscope. And the actual person, the owner of that DNA, was in Los Angeles, and at the exact same time, experiments were done on the person in Los Angeles, where things were done with this person to elicit different, very powerful emotional states. And the DNA over in New York, at precisely and exactly the same moment as these changes were taking place in the person in LA, the DNA changed in New York.
Wow.
And the organisation is HeartMath. You can Google them, they do fascinating research. And this is more in the realm of quantum physics, but they've done amazing research on the heart and just discovered, it was them who discovered neural pathways in the heart. And they discovered that the heart thinks independently of the brain. And since then, all these neurocardiologists have made the same discoveries. This has been an amazing discovery for the neurocardiologists who are working simply to the medical model. And for them to discover neural pathways in the heart was completely mind-blowing science. And to recognise the effect of the mind on the heart and the effect of emotions on the heart. And, the research shows that people who are most prone to heart attacks are single older men who are lonely and who don't talk about their feelings. So that is, men usually talk about their feelings to their wives or their partner, their female partner, and possibly to a male partner as well. I imagine that would be the case as well. Perhaps not 100% of the time, but a certain percentage. And without that person to share their feelings with, they keep it all locked in because men aren't very good at talking to each other and making themselves vulnerable and, discharging their feelings in a safe, appropriate way with one another. They would usually want to do that with a woman. And which makes, older single men the most prone group to heart attack. And talking about our feelings and what's going on for us is actually very important in unblocking energy. And communicating our feelings, communicating at a feeling level is vital because we are human beings. We feel. We are feeling beings who think. Sharing our thoughts won't make much difference. Sharing our feelings, discharging our emotions in the various ways that are available to us, sharing if something's very upsetting to us or causing problems, speaking with a trusted friend or colleague or family member or therapist is actually very, very important, as long as it's somebody who we trust, who will listen to us, who will validate our feelings and in an empathic way, but will not try to fix us and give us advice. And I emphasize not try and fix and give advice, which is why very often a trained counsellor is a very good idea. A person who's completely neutral in your life. Often family and friends can be the worst person to talk to. If you're lucky, you'll have a good friend, a close friend. If you're lucky, you'll have one, maybe a couple of people in your life that you can talk to. And it's very important for all of us to have somebody like that in our lives. If not, get a counsellor. Lots of people do. And fortunately, there's no stigma attached to it anymore. So, there are lots of ways we can unblock energy, but what is needed is for us to have our feelings validated, to have somebody understand us, a trusted person who listens and validates and lets us know that our feeling is real and understood, understandable and understood. And that does a lot of unblocking of energy. Sometimes we require a lot more than that because we actually do need to work on ourselves. We need to look at the cause, not the effect. Looking at the effect is good, but we've got to track that back into the cause and look at the relationship between cause and effect. It's very, very important. And not just slip into these very bad habits that some people fall into of trying to deny the effect or allowing the effect to take them into feelings of self-pity or avoidance. Avoidance could be through problematic behaviours, alcohol, things like that. And as I said before, meditation is great as long as you know how to do a very, very deep meditation that connects you with your spiritual self. Not all meditations do this. That's why I'm being quite specific. Raj Yoga does it and Vipassana does it. And I'm not an expert on other kind. Mindfulness doesn't really. That's, something else. But when we meditate, whatever is repressed in us will come to the surface. When we're a very dedicated, meditator, who it's part of our lifestyle. And, having people we can talk to, or someone we can talk to, looking at ourselves, looking at the areas of me or my life that are causing problems is really important. That's because
Thank you for clarifying that.
That's where the energy gets blocked. And, in the process of self-transformation and the spiritual journey, it's imperative that I unblock these pockets of blocked energy, these voids where the energy is blocked. And because only through doing this can I become whole and feel complete. Know thyself. What was it, Shakespeare, who said, "To thine own self be true"? We must be true to ourselves. We must face ourselves, look at the truth about ourselves. It's very, very easy to look at others and see what's wrong with others. I need to look at me. That's where my focus needs to be, not on others, not on the outside situations. I need to have my focus fairly and squarely on myself, because I am the only person I can fix, and I am the only person I need to fix. Everyone is on their own journey. Everyone is creating their own future, and I need to create mine. And I can't do that overnight. It takes a long time. But we can do it in a lifetime, or in much less than a lifetime. Once we're all grown up and we've worked out that everything is not right inside, then we start working on ourselves. Frequently, people are in their late 20s, around about 28, around about that first Saturn return, is when there's going to be some kind of something's going to happen, which will tell us, all is not well. I need to look at this. And then, it goes on. So that's my answer to your question, Ranjula. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, then let us finish with a short meditation. And we'll just I'll speak a short commentary. So just allow your thoughts to recede. Let go of your day. Let go of the outside world. With its complications. And just bring your focus to the inner part of you. And move into the stillness. Into that very quiet, calm space inside. And feel your inner light growing as you focus on yourself. The inner light increases. And this inner light enables me to see those aspects of myself that require my attention. And I just allow myself to sit with this. And I bring forth the willingness to see whatever is there within me. To let go of resistance. As I let go, those knots and blocks that are the ego constructions of my mind. I feel that pain, seeing these flaws in myself. And I let them go. I remain willing to see what is in the mirror. That is all I have to do. Where I am not willing, where the will is blocked, I ask for help from that being greater than myself. Where I am blind, I ask for light. Wherever I am lost, I ask to be found. And the help is always there. If I have the humility to accept it. All I have to do is be willing and humble. To allow that perfect being inside me to become clean and emerged. And to steadfastly keep that vision of my perfect self in front of me. I know it is there. It has always been there and it will always be there. I must allow my perfection to emerge. And not hold on to the imperfection which hides the true self. This is my journey. Shanti.